Whether it's Alien, Moon, or The Expanse, where would science fiction be without space mining? But real-world space mining companies backed by big names and millions of dollars ultimately haven't materialized. Enter Luxembourg, one of the smallest countries in the world. Today, it's helping companies launch sustainable space mining endeavors on the moon and beyond.
At some point in the future, we will become multiplanetary, as Elon Musk likes to say. So why not help to accelerate that, right?
And with a decades-long track record of making space a profitable business, Luxembourg is betting big on everything from space resources, satellites, and training the next generation of space entrepreneurs.
The footprint that Luxembourg has in space is so much bigger than the footprint that Luxembourg has on Earth, and I think that's hugely exciting.
Luxembourg now has the largest space budget per capita in the world.
We tripled the number of space companies in Luxembourg in less than 6 years. We have more than 70 companies here in the space sector.
This small country's big ambitions could open the door to an entirely new world of possibilities, scientific discoveries, and exploration that will allow humanity to take that next giant leap.
How can we have access to the sorts of potential that the solar system brings? These are real companies that exist in Luxembourg that are trying to, innovate in space in order to make life on Earth better, but also to make life beyond Earth possible.
Luxembourg, given its small size and strong financial sector, has one of the highest GDP per capita in the world. But the industries on which it's historically depended on, steel, and then more recently financial services, are prone to fluctuations. In 1985, after the steel crisis during the 1970s and 80s, the government, keen to diversify its economy, helped launch Europe's first private satellite operator, SES.
So SES stands for Société Européenne de Satellites. And we started life really right back at the very dawn of delivering television over satellite, increasing the number of channels that everyone has access to from just a handful to many hundreds.
Watching Sky. More channels, more choice. Television's new generation.
Now we operate more than 50 satellites in geostationary orbit. We also operate 20 satellites much closer to the Earth in medium Earth orbit. So more than 1 billion people rely on SES for their video programming every single day. And so over that 35-year period, we've managed to grow from one satellite in one slot serving predominantly Germany, then Europe. Now we've expanded across Europe, but also to India, to Brazil, to the Philippines, 360 million households that look to SES satellites every single day.
SES was a bold, innovative move by the Luxembourg government that turned out to be the right one. It's now the largest satellite company in terms of revenue in the world.
Satellite and space is big and hard, and it takes long-term vision and long-term commitment, and that really needs to be underpinned by a great environment, a great ecosystem, but also real conviction from the government.
The space and satellite sector now represents nearly 2% of Luxembourg's total GDP, and its thriving space ecosystem highlights the benefit of being a small country. Decisions to enter new industries and create legal frameworks for new companies all happen quicker here.
We are able to take decisions faster maybe than larger countries. You can coordinate more easily because everything is smaller. You can reach the other people more quickly. And so we are able to react maybe in a more flexible and faster way.
I think in the case of space, it's having a very, open and flexible regulatory regime. It's being very encouraging of startups. It's sort of giving support to companies with a longer term vision, because it's tough to do that. As a startup, you generally want to start developing revenue and business very, very quickly. And I think what you need is that support from a country that's able to have that long term vision. And I think that's something that Luxembourg has done very, very well here.
Given its continued success with SES, which has expanded in recent years to include rapidly growing data markets such as telecommunications, mobile network operators, and cloud services, Luxembourg wants to go even further, taking big steps to place itself at the center of the map for space businesses.
And so in 2005, we joined the European Space Agency and we created a dedicated team at the government, at the Ministry of Research at that time, supporting the development of that space sector. And then, of course, the sector grew and became more and more important with more and more companies. And in 2016, we launched the spaceresource.lu initiative, looking at the utilization of space resources. And there we saw that we need to actually look at the ecosystem and the space sector in a much wider way, not only focusing on giving R&D co-funding to companies, but really looking at all kinds of different aspects, the international dimension, the legal and regulatory domain, the financial side, but also research and education. And so we decided to create the Luxembourg Space Agency to in the end address all this in all its complexity with a dedicated agency.
Among the agency's first initiatives, train the next generation of space enthusiasts.
So the Luxembourg Space Agency was an initiator to our master's program, and they helped with resources and funding so we could launch the program 2 years ago, and they have been instrumental in the design of the program. And our goal is very much to tailor it to the needs of the sector. So our students, they do internships in some of these companies. They do industrial master thesis projects where they will be based at a company doing their thesis project. So this helps us to tailor the program so it meets the demand that's out there.
At the University of Luxembourg, students from around the globe learn different skills related to the space industry that are in line with Luxembourg's commercial-oriented space program.
So right now we're sitting in the Luna Lab. Students here work primarily with rovers and learn how to navigate with them and how to control them. We have the Zero G Lab, where we have forced air platforms that float on a cushion of air and can move in 2 dimensions frictionlessly. We have the CubeSat Lab, where we can assemble and test CubeSats. Finally, our Communications and Networking Lab. So you can simulate the orbits of satellite in different constellations.
All of these skills are training the next generation to not only work in existing space industries, like satellites and communication, but for the future space ecosystem on the moon.
I do think we will see moon bases in the not too distant future, and this is a first step. I think what we'll see is that we'll create an ecosystem where services are provided by different parties. And I believe there will be an economy in space to sustain this.
Another major step for Luxembourg was laying down a legal framework that would eliminate any uncertainties for space companies. In 2017, they became the second place to make harvesting resources in space legal after the USA.
And it's very obvious that in the long term you will need an international framework on this. But in the meantime, if you want to progress, if you want to also support this new industry and this new sector, you need to start clarifying the things. And that's why we recognize the need to indeed implement a first law on a national level, at least starting to clarify the things on a Luxembourg level.
Luxembourg's policies and investment have attracted the likes of iSpace, a private lunar robotic exploration company first launched in Japan.
This vision of expanding the economy in space by leveraging space resources was very aligned with the vision of iSpace, and therefore we decided to open an office here. We want to enable new entrepreneurs, new businesses to develop their businesses on the moon because they'll have a cheap and frequent access to lunar surface.
To achieve this, they're building commercial lunar landers with high-frequency and low-cost delivery systems to the moon, and lunar rovers that can carry cargo, take measurements, and collect data to inform customers of the environment.
And what we're seeing, looking forward to the lunar ecosystem, is that any business on Earth has activity to do on the moon. Construction, energy, resource exploration, resource utilization, all those businesses that are currently active on Earth translate very easily to the lunar environment. We just need to provide a cheap way to get there. On the first mission that will launch next year, our main customer is from Dubai, actually. It's the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. They're launching their first lunar rover on our spacecraft. We also have customers from Canada, from Japan, so it's a very international mission.
iSpace was also awarded 2 contracts from NASA to collect lunar regolith and transfer ownership of the resource to the agency as part of the Artemis program to the Moon.
And if we're successful, this will make iSpace Europe, so the entity located in Luxembourg, the first company to actually put in practice the law of space resources that was passed in 2017.
But getting to the Moon and delivering resources is only part of what an economy on the Moon will need.
Quickly you realize, okay, you want to see a lunar colony develop, okay, you cannot bring everything from Earth. So if you want to do local manufacturing, you want to be able to produce it locally on the Moon, and then the critical part that you really need is energy.
To do this, a Luxembourg-based company called Mana Electric hopes to turn sand on Earth and regolith on the Moon and Mars into solar panels. After winning an award, Mana Electric was supported by the Luxembourg Space Agency in securing an R&D contract from the European Space Agency. This secured initial funding for the company and allowed it to develop its technologies.
Yeah, our objective is to be the utility company of the solar system, providing energy wherever people may go. So we provide solar panels here on Earth for power resources. We want to provide it on the Moon, in space, and even when humans go to Mars and beyond, we want to be there providing power. The same way that you pay your utility bill today, how great would it be if you can just plug in?
Their first product, which they hope to commercialize in the next couple of years, the TerraBox.
So the short-term focus at Mana is our terrestrial product, which is the TerraBox, which is basically a containerized solution. So it's about 6 shipping containers that we can feed desert sand into the container, and we can produce fully functional solar panels from that desert sand.
Their terrestrial products allow for Mana Electric to create a sustainable business in the short term while developing the technology needed for space, which is perfectly in line with the Luxembourg Space Agency's goals.
I think what we've been able to do at Mana is find this sweet spot where we can apply technologies both for Earth and for space, this 2 birds, 1 stone approach. It's no longer a horizon of 10, 15 years when you might get your return. You're looking at really starting to generate revenues shorter term.
Mana Electric also follows closely with the Luxembourg Space Agency's emphasis on utilizing space resources for the future space economy.
Yeah, so in situ resource utilization, or we call it ISRU, it basically stands for utilizing what's available locally. When you go to the Moon, for example, ISRU is applied like, okay, let's use the local resources that we have on the Moon to produce goods.
To help develop the ISRU concept and shepherd in the next generation of companies, the Luxembourg Space Agency even opened up a facility that's the first of its kind. It's called ESRIC, or European Space Resources Innovation Center, and it's dedicated entirely to the research of space resources.
From prospecting of resources to mining the resources to processing them for different applications. If you're able to use the resources in space, you don't need to launch everything from the ground. And for example, you can think about refueling satellites in space by using fuel generated in space, or servicing satellites with different equipment which is produced in space.
Whether it's satellite communications or utilizing space resources, Luxembourg is showing that the new space economy can benefit everyone and is no longer an exclusive club for only a few.
I think the really exciting thing we see about the innovation in Luxembourg right now around space is it's all about how to solve problems. It's how do we use space to provide better visibility of what's going on Earth. It's how do we use space to improve agriculture. It's how do we innovate in space with smaller satellites, with more payloads that can have an impact on our lives, make life more sustainable. I think one of the things that we're all faced with is climate change and how do we protect the Earth for future generations, and space has a huge role to play there. It was the case that only governments could impact 1 billion people. Now individuals can do that just by innovating and investing and having a great idea and having that idea come to market. And I think Luxembourg is the perfect environment for that.